Hey guys, welcome to a video. So it is Narrative Shark here, Narrative Shark, I don't know how to pronounce it. So this is my first video on this channel, so welcome. On this channel, what I'll be doing is I'll be reading other people's stories. Mainly I get it from Reddit, so you will be, if this is your story from Reddit, you will be linked down in the description for credit. But if you guys do have any interesting stories, make sure you guys definitely do send them to my email, which will be down in the description. But without further ado, let's start the story. It's not a job most people dream of, I guess. I prepare for the dead for the final goodbyes. It's quiet work, mostly precise. I've seen a lot in my time here, but nothing prepares you for some things, and nothing prepared me for him. This started about a month ago, maybe a little more. It's all a bit fuzzy now, for reasons that will become clear. I remember the day it shifted through. I'd just finished with a young woman, a girl, really, late teens, maybe early 20s. The report said suicidal, gunshot to the face, a messy, tragic end. Her body was odd, not in a gruesome way, not more than usual for that kind of trauma. But her shoulders, they seemed to sag, just a little too much, even in death, even with me working to make her presentable, as if she'd be crying something immense for a very long time. Her parents, when they came to make arrangements, were devastated, of course. They kept saying she's been struggling with anxiety, kept talking about her weight. Said she always complained about a terrible weight on her shoulders, a physical burden no one else could see or understand. They said she insisted it wasn't just a feeling, it was real. I nodded and listened. Grief does strange things to people, makes them fixate on details. I did my work, tried to offer what little comfort I could. She was buried a few days later. Then she started appearing, the old man. Every morning without fail when I arrived at the building, he would be there, waiting, leaning against a cold brick wall by the entrance, or sometimes just standing, swaying slightly like a dried up reed in a non-existent wind. He was old, impossibly old. It felt like not just wrinkled and grey, but ancient, skeletal. It was the only word that comes close. His skin was like an old parchment, stretched so tight over his bones that you could see their outline. His cheekbones, his jaw, the jobby joints of his fingers, he was abnormally thin, as if he hadn't eaten a proper meal in a century. His clothes were ragged, thin and dirty, offering no protection against the morning chill. And every day the same routine. I'd see him from down the block, a knot tightening in my stomach. I'd try to walk a little faster, maybe look at my phone, pretend I didn't see him. It never worked. As I'd approach the door, he'd shuffle forward, his movements slow, organizing, one hand loud and trembling. His eyes, sunk deep in their sockets, were like old, clouded marbles, but they'd fix on me with an unnerving intensity. "Spare change, son?" His voice with a dry rasp, like sandpaper on wood, just a little something for an old man. Always the same words, always the same pleading, yet somehow demanding. He never got aggressive, never raised his voice, just a persistent, quiet begging. The first few times I felt a pang of pity. He looked so wrecked. I gave him $1, maybe $2. He'd snatch it with surprising speed, his thin lips pulling back in what might have been a smile or maybe a grimace. Then he'd shuffle away, disappearing around the corner. But he was back the next day and the next and the next. My pity started to wear thin. It became an annoyance, a daily irritation. I had to navigate just to get to work. Why me? There were other people going to this building, other businesses on the same block, but he only ever approached me. He'd be there when I arrived, gone by the time anyone else showed up. It was like he knew my schedule. I started to ignore him. I'd walk past, eyes straight ahead, headphones in. Even if I was listening to anything, he'd still try. That raspy voice would follow me. "Son, just a little something?" I'd feel his glaze on the back until I was through the door. It made my skin crawl. The building manager saw him a couple times, shooed him away. He'd go docile as a lamb, but the next morning he'd be back waiting for me. I began to dread going to work, not because of the deceased I cared for, but for the living ghost at the door. He never touched me, never got too close, but his presence was a constant. It felt targeted. I wondered briefly if he was some distant relative of one of the families I served, but that didn't seem to make sense. His appearance too extreme, too unsettling. And this all started, I was sure of it, right after the young woman with the weight was laid to rest. The thought flickered, then I dismissed it. Coincidence? This city has plenty of desperate people. But the daily ritual continued. The skeletal figure, the outstretched hand, the raspy plea. Some days I'd give in, shove a bill into his hand just to make him go away, to stop that awful stare. He never said thank you, just took the money and vanished. This went on for weeks. It felt like months. My sleep started to suffer. I seen his face in my dreams, that skeletal waiting figure. I was jumpy, irritable. My colleagues at the mortuary noticed I was on edge. I just shrugged it off, said I wasn't sleeping well. How could I explain this? That ancient-looking beggar was singling me out every morning. They'd think I was losing it. Finally, one morning I snapped. I've had a particularly bad night filled with those hollow staring eyes. As I approached the building, there he was, same spot, same pose. Son, a little help for the old man? Look, I said, my voice sharpened than I intended. I can't keep doing this. You need to find somewhere else to be. He just blinked. Slowly, that hand remained outstretched. Just a little something, son? Frustration boiled. No, not today, not anymore. You need to leave me alone. He didn't react, didn't flinch, just kept the hand out, his glaze underwaving. It was like talking to a wall, a particularly creepy wall. That was it. I pulled out my phone. I'm calling the police, I told him, my hand shaking slightly as I dialed. This is harassment. He watched me dial, his expression unchanging. It was unnerving. He showed no fear, no concern, just patience. The dispatcher took my report. Loitering, persistent begging, causing distress. They said they'd send a car when one was available. I stood there a few feet from the old man waiting. He waited too, perfectly still. The silence was heavy, broken by only the distant city sounds. It felt like a showdown, a ridiculous, pathetic showdown. A patrol car pulled up around 20 minutes later. Two officers got out, young, looking bored. I explained the situation, how the man was here every day and he only approached me, how this was becoming a serious issue. They looked at the old man. He just stood there, looking frail and harmless, a picture of parital old age. One of the officers, a woman, sighed. Sir, she said to me, he looks pretty harmless and well, he's on a public sidewalk. Technically, he's not doing anything illegal by asking for money. But it's every day, I insisted, and he only targets me. It's unsettling. The other officer, a burly guy, chimed in. Look, we can ask him to move along, but he'll probably just be back here tomorrow. These guys, they find a spot. He shrugged. Maybe, the woman officer suggested. You could just give him a few dollars. It might be easier than calling us every day. He looks like he could really use it. I stared at them. That was their solution? Give him money? I felt a surge of helpless anger. So you're not going to do anything? We'll talk to him, sir, the burly one said, already walking towards the old man. Tell him not to bother you, but honestly, there's not much we can do. They had a quiet word with him. I could hear what was said. The old man nodded a few times, and the officers came back to me. He says he won't bother you again, sir, the woman said. Hopefully that's the end of it. They got in their car and drove off. I looked at the old man. He was looking at me. That same empty, expectant gaze. He hasn't moved. The officers' intervention had done nothing. He was still there, waiting. A wave of defeat washed over me. They were right. What else could be done? I was stuck with him. Defeated, frustrated, and just wanting it to be over, I reached into my wallet. I didn't have much cash, but pulled out a 20. Not a lot, but not a little either. Enough, I hoped, to make him leave for good this time. Maybe enough for a decent meal, a warm place for the night. I walked over to him, held out the bill. Here, I said, my voice flat. Take it and please just go. His skeletal fingers, surprisingly nimble, plucked up the 20 from my hand. For the first time, I saw something flicker in those clouded eyes, a glint, and his lips pulled back into that smile grimace, wider this time. It sent a shiver down my spine. He didn't say a word. He just turned with that same slow, shuffling gait. He walked away. He didn't look back. He rounded the corner and he was gone. I stood there for a long moment, the spot where he stood feeling suddenly strangely empty. A profound sense of relief washed through me. Finally, it was over. He was gone. Maybe the 20 was all it took. Maybe he finally got him what he wanted from me. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I went to work, focused on my task. The constant background hum of anxiety I've been living with seems to have faded. I felt lighter. I actually ate a proper dinner that night, slept soundly for the first time in weeks. I woke up the next morning feeling heavy. Not emotional heavy, physically heavy. My shoulders ached, a deep burning ache, as if I'd been lifting weights all night. My neck was stiff. I groaned. Rolling out of bed, must have slept funny. I shuffled towards the bathroom, the ache in my shoulders intensifying with each step. I stretched, trying to work out the kinks, but feeling precise. A dull, crushing pressure centered right between my shoulder blades. I reached the bathroom, flickered on the light, looked in the mirror, and I screamed. It wasn't a loud scream, more of a choked, strangled gasp. My blood ran cold, colder than any chilled room in the building. My heart hammered against my ribs, threatening to break free. There, in the mirror, perched on my shoulders, was the old man. He was sitting there, cross-legged, as if my shoulders were the most natural throne in the world. His skeletal legs were hooked around my neck, his hideous thin arms wrapped around my head, his gnarled fingers resting lightly on my temples. He was a dead weight. And he was smiling, that same wide, lipless grimace. And he was smiling, knowing his clouded eyes reflected in the mirror staring directly into mine. I whirled around, hands flying up to my shoulders, expecting to feel him, to grab him, to throw him off. Nothing. My hands met only my own skin, my own shirt. There was nothing there. I span back to the mirror, heart pounding. He was still there, still perched on my shoulders, still smiling. That awful smile. That crushing pressure was real. My muscles were screaming under the strain. My spine felt like it was compressing, but when I touched my shoulders, there was nothing. He existed only in the reflection on my back. Get off me, I yelled, my voice cracking. I thrashed, trying to shake him loose like a dog trying to get rid of itself of fleas. I jumped up and down, I spun in circles. Nothing happened. In the mirror, he remained perfectly balanced, his smile unwavering, his eyes fixed on mine. He didn't even sway. Panic, raw and primal, clawed at my throat. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. I splashed cold water on my face, looked again, still there. I pinched myself hard. I was awake. This is happening. I tried talking to him, to the reflection. What do you want? Who are you? My voice was a desperate whisper. No response, just that silent, knowing smile. His weight seemed to increase, pressing me down. I stumbled out the bathroom, avoiding mirrors, but I could still feel him, that terrible, crushing burden, the girl. That young woman who carried a weight, her slumped shoulders, the way her parents described their suffering. It hit me with a force of physical blow. This was her weight. This is what she'd been carrying, and somehow that old man, he was it. How was it his conduit? And by giving him money, by engaging him with that final transaction, I had taken it from him, or he had passed it to me. The relief I felt yesterday was a cruel joke. It hadn't left, he transferred. I spent the rest of the day in a daze of terror and disbelief. Every reflection surface became a source of horror. A shop window, a car side mirror, even a dark screen on my phone. Each time he was there, perched on my shoulders, that terrible smile fixing on his face. And the weight? God, the weight was unbearable. Who could I tell? The police? They'd thought I'd be overreacting to a beggar. What would they say to this? They'd lock me up. My colleagues, my friends, they'd think I finally cracked under the strain of my job. I remember the young woman's parents. No one believed her, they said. They said it was just a feeling. Now I understood. It wasn't just a feeling, it was real. And now it was mine. I don't know what to do. The weight's always been there. And every time I catch myself in the reflection, he's there too, smiling, waiting. I think he's waiting for me to find someone else to pass this on to. But how? And who would deserve such a fate? I think this is a curse from that poor girl or something that clung to her. Now it clings to me. The old man, it was just a ferryman, and there's no one in this world who will believe me. I'm carrying this alone, just like she did. That is the end of the story for today. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you guys subscribe and like for more videos just like these. Make sure you guys submit your stories down in the description, and let me know what else I can improve on, because I'm trying to improve for you guys and make these videos as enjoyable as possible. But without further ado, see you guys in the next one.